I'm here with Meka, the MP for Whaitiri. Kia ora, Meka. Thanks for joining us.
Tēnā koe, Andrew. Lovely to be back on Hawke's Bay app.
Yes, nice to see you. I won't say it's been a long time. We've seen each other recently. A lot has happened in your political life since I last interviewed you in April. Quite a major surprise you sprang when you announced that you were leaving the Labour Party and your ministerial roles and you were going to join Te Pāti Māori. What led you to do this?
Yeah, like I said on the day at Waipatu, it wasn't an easy decision, but it was a decision for me in my political career, what is important to me. And so the decision to leave was all part of my own journey of being a strong Māori woman from tribes that born strong Māori woman, and and an absolute passion for the people and the significance that Parliament can play and also inhibits. And so there wasn't a single reason, Andrew, of what actually made me leave. I declared when I was successful in the seat back in 2013 that I would do the job for 10 years. And I was getting towards that 10 year, and people who know me, I'm a planner. So then it was like, what am I going to do for the next 10 years? Yeah. So it was a combination of just, again, doing the thing, making a decision that was right for me. Politics is hard, and your family also has to be part of the mix. And so after much discussions with them, I decided to do what I did.
Yeah, well, you're going to still be in politics, but hopefully for you, yes.
Hopefully.
But was the decision made? It was quite a quick decision, the actual decision to...
The decision to leave was probably done in a course of 6 days.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a long leeway plot of doing something. It's just coming to a realisation that maybe I'd done my dash with Labour. Yeah. I'd given 10 solid years of service to them, very proud of what I achieved with and under them and the opportunities it gave me. But like most things, you get a calling, and I got a calling, and a calling was to return back to the only Indigenous party in Aotearoa, New Zealand, to champion kaupapa that are important to our very own people, not to be seen as part of a broader church, but as the Indigenous tangata whenua of this land. And we had certain rights guaranteed to us under Te Tiriti, and 183 years, you can say that probably that treaty hasn't been honoured, and that's what the calling has been for me, is now to go back into a movement that will hopefully bring us into the 21st century and honouring that particular commitment. Yeah.
Did you feel let down by the Prime Minister and your Labour colleagues?
No, I think it's like anything. When we had the change at the beginning of the year with Jacinda leaving, I mean, I was given a ministerial role under Jacinda. Of course, I had some early challenges in that first term. She stuck with me. I regained her confidence, and she brought me back as a minister. And I enjoyed her leadership, her style of leadership, her openness to ideas. Of course, when she left, it kind of, for me, you have to, people move, people change, and for whatever reason, I respected her reason. We obviously got Chris Hipkins in, and like any new leader, you've got to give them time to find their feet. And then we just had a whole lot of, incidents with my good mate Stu Nash, and then of course another good mate Kiritapu Allen, and then some other people I've got respect for, Michael Wood, and then of course other colleagues. And so, to be honest, it just didn't seem to be the Labour Party I joined.
Yeah.
And, I just made the decision that, like I said, was right for me, my whānau, and the people I represent.
Yeah. Now, you spoke about those difficult times you went through. Obviously, there were allegations brought against you and that by staff member and that. Is that in the past now? Have you gotten over that?
Well, actually, I have. I've closed that until, of course, the recent incident with good friend Kiritapu Allen and mental well-being and how much support there is in Parliament for all MPs.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you had Dr. Elizabeth Kirikiri speak out about what she was going through. There's a whole lot of deja vu listening to to Dr. Elizabeth's situation in relation to mine,
Yeah.
about all you want is to be treated fairly.
Yeah.
If you're MP, I completely get that there's an imbalance between staff and MPs, but the system in Parliament should be there to treat everybody fairly, and that is people should feel comfortable to come forward if they're feeling they're being mistreated, but the person whose allegations are levied at should also be treated in a fair way.
Yeah.
And there's always two sides of the story, and what Elizabeth shared in the House as recent as her final speech was that she was never accorded the right to get her side.
Yeah.
That's what resonated with me in terms of your question. It took me back to a period where actually that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
So, and you're just absolutely handbound. You're not allowed to talk to anybody. You're not allowed to express, of anything. She said in the House that the complaint was actually the co-leaders, so there was no complaint. This is according to Elizabeth. My complaint was a third party, someone that wasn't even there.
Yeah.
So, but this again came out in the investigation. But like I said, I've moved beyond it. But her korero and the question around what support there is for all MPs in the House, that's took me back to that situation.
Do you think there is more pressure on Wahine Māori in Parliament?
Well, the place is so colonial. Parliament is such a Western system. We've brought it from London to here. I recall doing an article with a very good journalist here in Hawke's Bay when I was going through, you might know her, I think her name was Astrid, and I talked about the hierarchy in this country of whose voices are heard the most. And I said it's white men, then it goes white woman, brown men and brown woman. I got in so much trouble for being honest as a brown woman that my voice is like the fourth.
Yeah.
And so I have to speak up harder and louder to be heard. And when we do that, we're being accused of being bullies, of being bolshy. But how else are we going to get our voices heard? But to be really, sharp on what we believe in. And so, yes, when Māori women go into those, well, not only are we politicians, but we're generally mothers. We know we've got responsibilities in the home, and we're doing this for a very short time. And so there's a sense of having to do things at a quicker pace, coupled with the fact that your voice is never heard, so you've got to bust through those layers, and therefore people make judgments that, you're just too bossy and you're too loud and you should just be quiet in the corner.
Yeah.
So that's my perception of my journey in politics. The others can talk for themselves, but I'm not going to stop talking up and out. Now that I've moved to Te Pāti Māori, I'll be able to talk a lot more freer than I was under Labour.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Kiritapu Allen, and obviously her situation played out in full public. How do you think that was handled? Was that also handled badly?
Absolutely terrible. And I've got to say, the media, here's the other thing. I talk about Parliament being a sort of a Western construct. What I would also say, the media in this country is very much like that, is they only want to report news that will shock people.
Well, not all the media.
Well, okay, except Hawke's Bay app. Yes. But in general speaking, this is why I think Māori generally are very wary of mainstream media, because they don't portray the full context of issues. They will pick bits to sensationalise it, and therefore, they'll attract viewers. With Kiritapu's situation, as sad as it was, high-rising, very effective minister doing some amazing stuff, has her mental leave break and then comes back to work far too soon, and then she has an accident.
Yeah.
So clearly, not justifying her actions of drying while under the influence, but the whole lead up to her didn't seem to be as reported as the fact that she's now fallen down in disgrace. And this is what upsets me the most, is that there's always two sides, but the media will only print one side, and not the fact that she was hardworking. She was on a very good trajectory of being a very effective minister, doing some amazing things, and then she's fallen from grace. The question should have been asked, why was she brought back so early?
Yeah. Well, that's why we have people, in positions so they can give their sides of the story as well, and we'll always do that. Just obviously there's been quite a few situations that Labour has dealt with this year. You referenced Stuart Nash and that as well, who gave his valedictorian speech as well, or his farewell speech. Are they falling apart? Is the party falling apart?
Hard to say. People will say yes. The only real answer is really the voters out there and the punters. And with the challenges Labour's had to face in the space of like the last 6 months, you would see a lift, I guess, in polls for the opposition. But it seems to be balancing out. Yeah. So hard to say whether what's been happening will affect this year's general election. Of course, they'll want to turn to their record or delivery, and there's been much gained under the Labour government. But, it's hard to tell. It's just going to be such an even election, even though people are predicting a change of government. People say this at the front end of the actual election campaign, but once you get closer, one thing I do know about Kiwi voters, they're quite conservative.
Yeah. And
so even though they're not liking them, you just got to play these next couple of months out. Yeah.
Now, because you spoke about how you saw going to Te Pāti Māori as sort of almost a homecoming and that sort of thing. What do you like about how the way they operate in Parliament and in the way they connect with the people?
Well, that whole point I said about that's a Western construct of governance is what we've got in Wellington, all right? And so there's certain protocols that you've got to adhere to. You've got to be in the House, you've got to talk on bills. There's so much time we spend in there, in my view, is kind of a waste of time. If you're a representative, you want to be doing the do's on the things that matter to your constituents. And so Te Pāti Māori have made it really clear to me, you put your people first, not this place, which is a complete reversal to Labour. It seems like you have to be in Parliament and you have to speak on bills that make not an ounce of difference to your people. You've got to turn up to committees to discuss things that doesn't matter to the people you vote. So you spend an enormous amount of time to keep the machinery of Parliament going, which means scaffold to those that you represent. So Te Pāti Māori has completely turned that around for me to say, if there's kaupapa out with your people, you prioritise that.
Okay.
And so that's the freedom I talk about in getting out and champion and talk about things that only matter to your people. And I love that ability to be able to do that a bit more.
Now, you were quite an integral part of the Māori caucus within the Labour Party, and when you left there was shock and horror, Willie Jackson saying, I never saw it coming. Do you regret the way you handled that? And also, have you had any communications with them?
Well, I was just with him today at Waimaram, and he's still saying in Te Reo that he's hoha with me, which is, look, I've always respected any Māori MP that's gone into Parliament because it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
The fact that he was shocked with my decision is not a reflection of he didn't see it coming. They just didn't hear the messages that I was giving them. The messages weren't about me being unhappy. My message was about this is what I need in my electorate. These are, Gabriel, classic example. Lots that I saw, the maraes that opened their doors, the people that were helping out for all people, and, just wanting to do best by them to make sure that the government was coming in to swing behind those entities. And everything was just an absolute struggle right up to today with land classification and the government not having a bespoke classification level 3 for whenua Māori, because our relationship with our land is, I won't say it's different, it's more deep-seated because we've got very little land left. So the thought of having to leave your land is just foreign, but an engaging government and engaging government departments will know that you can't just rock up to a resident on Māori land to say, see you later, we're going to buy you, and away you go.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. And these are the sort of messages that, you know, in my time I was there, was trying to give them to navigate the government through this tragedy of Gabriel. Not just with Māori, I was doing with the farmers, with the growers, because that was my job to do it. And at some point, you know, you've just got to go, well, I don't know, people might have more time to stay in there repeating themselves, but to me, I just didn't want to spend any more energy in there, and I wanted to do things quite differently, and that's why I've done what I've done. And if it caught people by surprise, I can tell you this, Andrew, it wasn't throughout the multiple years of giving them warnings on my journey.
Yeah, because I must say, our last interview that we had in April, I did notice a shift in your language, and it was sort of kind of, you were more forthright in some of the things you said, and even whereas in the past maybe you would have spoken what the party's line kind of thing.
Well, you've got to always, in the mainstream party, you've got to do the party lines.
Yeah.
You know.
But that frustration eventually got to a point where you just...
I couldn't do any more. I couldn't swallow any more rats.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. I just couldn't. And I think asking people to do something and they'll say, well, the benefit for you, Meka, is that you were in government and you were a minister and you gave all that up. Actually, I turned that on its head. I gave that up because this is such a serious matter to me that I wasn't going in there for the baubles of office. I was going in there to do the best by those that put their confidence in me. And it just, to me, it was slow. And it didn't need to be slow. And, you know, I'm an operator, Andrew. I've got good networks. You know, I've been in the public service. I understand how that operates too. And trying to keep everybody around the table and gains for everybody was just too hard. Yeah.
Now, when you moved over, your cousin, Heather Skipworth, she sort of moved aside because she was the candidate for Te Pāti Māori, and she moved aside, and then she went and stood in Tukituk, but has since withdrawn there. Oh, is everything okay with the two of you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I respect Heather's decision to step down. She gave her reasons why. You know, it wasn't through a want of me trying to convince her not to, because she has done so much for our region and for our party, our political movement. But, you know, I respect her decision to part ways and to do what she wants to do. But like she said, when she decided to leave, it wasn't forever. Yeah. So everyone, just like I don't, we make decisions. Not all of it makes sense, but ultimately it's their decision to make.
So there are no bad feelings between the two of you?
Absolutely not, no. I just saw her the other day at Dr. Elizabeth's farewell speech. So, no, she's around. And the thing with Māori is that you can't divorce your relations.
Yes. You're still an MP, but you can't officially join Te Pāti Māori until after the elections if you get re-elected. What have you been doing in Parliament in the meantime?
So obviously still have questions in the House that I get to ask ministers, hold them to account. I speak on legislation that's important to our people, and then obviously helping Te Pāti Māori with our policy platforms for the upcoming election. Yeah. So that's what I've been doing in Parliament, but like I said, most of the work in the electorate is just getting around the vastness of my electorate from Pōtaka in the north to Wainuamata, just talking to people, because like you, many of them want to know, why did you leave? You know, and they don't really watch TV or read papers. They just want to hear it straight from you. So, you know, for the last 4 or 5 months, I've been just on the ground talking to people, and I've been just quite humbled by people who, you know, are going to follow me regardless of me leaving the party. And that's a reflection of people not understanding how Māori electorates work. It's the person. If you can get the people's confidence in and you work really hard for them, then they'll pretty much stick with you. And so all I'm doing is making sure that nothing's changed. You know, I still want to represent them. I've just moved to an Indigenous party that I can just unashamedly talk about issues that matter to our whānau.
Because I mean, it will be a test for you, because you know, Ikara Rāwhiti was Parakura's, Horomea's seat, dyed-in-the-wool Labour, and so it will be a test to see whether it's a Labour seat or whether it's a seat...
You're starting to sound like Willie Jackson.
So, no, I'm not meaning to, but...
Yeah, so I'm just going to say, I object to the fact that people say it was Parakura's seat.
Yeah.
The seat has always belonged to the voters of Ikaroa-Rāwhiti. Of course, we've got strong Labour roots, like everybody in my family. And remember, Te Pāti Māori was formed by those that were in the Labour Party.
Yes,
so
true.
leaving the Labour Party into Te Pāti Māori is not a new thing.
Yeah.
I'm not the first, and I definitely won't be the last.
Yeah.
So we acknowledge the genesis of the Labour Party for starting movements like Te Pāti Māori. But the seat of Ikaroa-Rāwhiti belongs to the people, and they will have their say this October the 14th.
So you say you won't be the last. Got any more names that are coming over?
Oh, I'm just going to get me back on the show later.
Sounds good. Now, Labour has announced Kusha Tanare Manuel as its candidate to replace you and to compete against you. She's from up Tairāwhiti way. Do you know and how do you rate her?
Yeah, I've got big respects for Kusha. The Tangaire family is a well-respected family from a place called Rangitukia. So that's up the east coast, a valley. And so she comes from a long line of a chiefly whānau, the Tangairis, and the Manuels, which is the Spanish side.
Okay.
Well, that's her husband's side. But look, Kusha's done so much for Ngāti Porou rugby. That's where she was as the CE. So you used to see her at many of the rugby events. And so, look, she's going to be an extremely formidable opponent in this election. And like all of my general elections, we and I do always pay respect to who's going up for the seat.
Yeah.
And so I will be respecting Kusha as I have done with every opponent, because it is a competition. It is, it's an election and people get to make their choice. And so she'll bring into Labour her networks throughout Ngāti Porou, throughout the sporting community, and so should she in this up and coming election. And of course, she's probably done more than just rugby and iwi stuff. And so people just want to know particularly who she is, where she's from, and how giving a vote to her will ensure that their interests and their desires will be met.
Yeah. Now, we've spoken before about how big your electorate is. Is your, because it's enormous, it's from just outside Wellington to way up north, on the east coast. Has your strategy changed for how you deal with it?
No, only the decision to leave a major party into a minor party.
Yeah.
So, and then being prepared that not everyone would understand why I did that. So knowing Māori electoral seats, they'll have confidence in you if you front up and you're consistent. And that's what I've tried to do in the last 10 years, is front up, be consistent, reach into the communities. But obviously, I made a decision that would have caught a lot of people on the hop. And so that's why the trips around the electorate, touching base with people to answer any concerns and to putting the affairs away, that I should be punished for leaving, which is Willie Jackson's words, I should be punished for leaving the party, rather than saying, actually, I've done 10 years of solid service.
Yeah. And,
I do have a right to make a decision to go on a different pathway. I'm still hungry to do the things that I loved under Labour.
Yeah.
I'm just exploring a different flagship that will just give me the freedom to speak up, to share, to challenge. But also, I've always said it's not just about criticising governments or whoever's in that, but actually putting up our Indigenous models, the solutions, because we never talk about the good things following Māori knowledge can benefit not just to Māori people, but actually to the nation and therefore the world. And that's I'm giving you an indication of what role I'm going to be playing. It's more in that solutions-based focus. So when we say by Māori for Māori, we're actually saying by Māori for everybody.
Yeah. So now, but you mentioned a while back that you've got different teams.
The size of the electorate is massive. I've got 8 hoarding teams.
Wow.
So, I've got one up the coast, one in Gisborne, one in Wairoa, Napier, Hastings, Tamatea, Wairarapa, and
Why
Hucktown.
Tamatea?
Because I've got whānau there.
And they want their own team.
And they want their own team. And, I love my whānau from Tamatea, and they do the do's. And so those are the 8 teams. We've always treated every election uniquely different. But what I've seen in this election is the sort of emergence of more supporters wanting to jump on our campaign. So I think back in the day, when I first started, I think I had one hoarding team, and me driving up and down the coast with my brother putting up hoardings, and it's just a luxury knowing that your hoardings are just. And last weekend, 209 hoardings.
Just like that, eh?
Up.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
And you know what? I feel like I've been cheated, Andrew, because I fixed the one at Pack and Save in Napier because that one fell down. I kind of like to get my hands dirty as the Kennett to
drill it in there.
Drill it in there, but they were so slick. There wasn't one hoarding that they left for me to put up except for the repairing the one at Napier. And I said, I'm turning up to do that, and so there you go. But again, that's just. Not everyone can be in the position we are, but I'm just really fortunate. And hoardings doesn't make an MP, but at least get your face out there.
Yeah. Now, obviously, the cyclone recovery will be an issue that you're standing on, and what you're going to do about that. What are you doing? What do you think about that, and what are some of the other issues you're standing on?
The biggest thing has been the land classifications, because I think... how do I put this?
These are the category 1, 2 and 3, yeah. So 3 being the worst, yeah.
3 being the worst, and just giving homeowners, property owners some surety about, where their future lies in terms of where the category is, who's going to give them that news, what does it mean for one, if you're 1, 2 or 3, 1 or 2, I understand, you're going to be okay because at least the insurance will take care of 1 and 2, you can be insured if you do some flood mitigation. 3, absolutely red zone.
Yeah.
Now I've just figured out, I've just been asking, there's about 300 properties across Hawke's Bay. And so then the next question is, who's going to sit down and talk with those 300 properties, because each of them will be quite unique. But right now, we've got a policy that says you can't go back there. Government with council going to buy you out and whatnot. So for some, that's what they need. My issue, like I said earlier, is Māori whenua will not leave their land. And so my question is, what are we going to do for them? And I know the Tangoil community have come up with a solution. They've said, you can buy us out, but we want to keep the land, and we're interested in exploring land in our area to rebuild on. That's an example of a localised solution to something challenging around Category 3. Now, I've got to wait and see whether government will take up that solution and work with the community in Tangoil, because that's what they want.
Yeah. And what other issues are you standing on?
So I'm actually the economic policy spokesperson.
So cost of living is a big thing, yeah?
Cost of living is huge, and so our taxation policy and removing GST off all foods. So we've had that since 2020, and we see that Labor has done a slightly U-turn in announcing, but only on fruit and veggies. But ours goes across the food. But the other thing is our taxation policy, and just trying to rebalance an unfair tax system.
So tax the wealthy more.
Tax the wealthy more. We've got categories for that. Tax the poor less. We've got a very practical calculator on the Te Pāti Māori website where you could go in there, just throw in what you earn and push this button, and it'll tell you what you get taxed under current settings, what you'll get taxed under Te Pāti Māori. People have been saying this is an amazing tool. And taxing the rich means that we can find another $7 billion, and so that's what we will use to fund initiatives that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. And do you think Labour will be the government after the elections?
Of course we want a left-leaning government. after this year's election, because we don't want the far right. They've been very clear they won't work with Te Pāti Māori.
Because there has been experience in the past with Te Pāti Māori working with National. Yeah.
Yes, but that was when the party was just evolving. It was in its infancy, and so no disrespect to the leaders of the time, but they thought they were doing the right thing by being in government and doing more things for their people. So I get that. But it doesn't work that way.
Was there a backlash after that?
They lost a lot of the seats that they won through the foreshore and seabed.
Yeah.
With the exception of, so there were 7 seats. They won 5 of them off Labour, and the only 2 they kept was the seat here on Ikaro Rāwhiti and the Naya seat.
Yeah.
But after they went into coalition with National, they lost all the seats, and the seats came back to Labour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how will you feel about working with your former colleagues in a coalition?
Fine. As long as it's not Willie. No, I'm just kidding. No. To be honest, you've got to lift yourself up over individual personalities, and I know it's hard to say this because politics is very personality driven. But what I'm confident in, Andrew, is Te Pāti Māori doesn't get into personality politics, because the people we represent, the issues they're confronting is serious. Cost of living is serious. Homelessness is serious. An unfair justice system is serious. So we can't muck around, whether I like you or not, or whether I've got a history with you. It's just, here's our policy. If we're going to work together, these are our bottom lines, we're yours. And once we agree, we've just got to get over ourselves and start working. So from your question to me is, yes, I will work with anybody so long as the kaupapa is the focus and not me as a person and you as a person.
Because, I mean, if you become a cabinet minister or a minister in the coalition government, Chris Hipkins will be your boss. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, like I said, we will cross that bridge. I'm not even thinking about returning as a minister, to be honest. It's not even, I've got 2 co-leaders. I want to back both Rawiri and Debbie in terms of getting our party vote up and being in a position to help form the next government.
Yeah.
That's my priority. You can jump to the baubles of office too soon, and I've seen that with other parties, and then you find out the control you thought you have slowly gets pulled away from you. Yeah. So you've just got to be very strategic on who you form relationships with, but more importantly, what your bottom lines are, so that you don't end yourself up in just a minister, but not being as effective as you may have wanted to be.
Now, we've spoken many times over the years. How have you changed as a politician, and what's important to you now?
So I've just, been in a mainstream party, I've understood how it works, the machinery of a major party down in Wellington. I've learnt how to campaign. I've learnt, how to say things to people, but meaning multiple things. I've learnt a few tricks, but I've always tried to, I'm a lifelong learner, Andrew, so I never ever assume that I know everything. But it's all geared towards, how do I take this new set of skills, being 10 years with Labour, being a minister, being the co-chair of the Māori caucus and the largest caucus, how do I turn that and turn it to have gains for the people I represent? It's always about ultimately the people that you represent and how you make best for them. So how have I changed? I think I've just become more seasoned. I've become more experienced. And now I don't take myself so seriously. And I know how to pick my battles.
Yeah. So why should the people of Ikaro Rāwhiti vote for you?
Yeah, just because I've been a loyal servant of the electorate. I haven't shied away from the big issues. I've confronted both within my former party and stood by our people on numerous occasions, but also have gained through being able to work collegially with people in Labour, but actually across the parliamentary precincts of all the political parties. I just respect everyone that puts their hands up to represent. But for me, I've still got a lot of fire in the belly and energy in the tank to do another term, and that's why I'm putting my name up again to represent the people. And what people will get is 10 years of loyal service, but now unashamedly Māori and a Māori political movement, and that's Te Pāti Māori.
Ngā mihi, Meka, thank you for your time, and we'll see you again, I hope.
Kia ora, thank you very much, Andrew. Ngā
Kia
mihi.
ora, kia ora.